So, all right. So, from what I've heard, besides Bill Belichick, you are the man there. That is the biggest job you can get. Explain to me what your job is. What do you do all day?
Well, my job's no different than my job was in the National Football League. We have to build a scouting department here. Now it's a little bit different. We have a lot more names we're dealing with. We're dealing with high school kids that would graduate in 2025, high school kids who graduate in 26, 27, 28. So there's a vast number of more, there's a huge volume of players. Where in the NFL, you don't really work on other draft classes. You work on one draft class at a time.
Right.
So you basically are working with, let's say, 350 names. And they're pretty easy to remember, and you know where they go to high school, you know who they date, you know what they like. You kind of learn those 350 people completely. This is 3,000 people because you're dealing with multiple. And so there's more volume here, and there's different avenues where players are coming from. And so it becomes a little bit overwhelming. It's a little bit like eating an elephant, it's just one bite at a time. So what my day is, I have to build a scouting department to handle the volume of names so we can actually write reports.
Okay.
When you are ever giving money to people for whatever job they do, and especially in sports, you have to have a grading system. You have to have a way to evaluate the person. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the problems? And once you can do that, then you can fairly equate dollar signs to that player. See, everybody talks about the NFL draft, and I'm sure anybody who's in your audience, they've heard the term, well, that guy's a first rounder. But
Hmm.
everything in the draft is about money, right? It's all about money. And so you have to be able to say what the player can do to equate to the money. If I said to you, this player will be a starting player his first year in the NFL, that's probably a first round pick. If I say he's going to be a backup for 2 years, that's probably a sixth round pick. So everything is verbiage based on what the reports are. So I have to build a whole scouting department here at North Carolina where professional people are grading high school players, writing reports, and then also handle the cap and handle the money and the flow of what we're doing with our locker room. And then there's the other areas that all pertain to admissions and all the things that go into making a football team. So Coach Belichick can focus on the things he does really well, which is coach the team.
Right. Right. Okay. So, explain scouting for 1 second. How do you tell in kids that are high school years how they have the it factor? I mean, these are young kids, and I get
Right.
so what are you looking for when you're scouting?
Well, I think a lot of it is like when you're looking for a date, right? Past performance predicts future achievement. I mean, so what you try to do is see what they've done in high school. Were they the team captain of their high school team? Did they win a state championship? Did they make playoffs? What were the things that they accomplished in high school? The key to scouting is to learn more about the player before you get them than after you get them.
Hmm.
And so you have to constantly collect data. And you have to be like a judge in a courtroom. You can't begin with the end in mind. So
Right.
you have to be completely biased about the player. And you can't form an opinion until you have all the data there. And so you're just constantly trying to find out about the player. And you need indicators. You need something to tell you what this guy did. Now, not all of them are team captains, not all of them won titles, but there's something in their personality that if you call people or you ask, you can find out a lot. So you've
Well,
got
that's
to
what I was going to ask
have.
you, if it's skill and personality, because I would imagine now coming to a school like yours or a school like Ohio State, Penn State, where cameras are going to be in front of them and there's a lot of pressure if they can completely fold or if they can deal with everything that's thrown at them. I mean, that's
Right,
got to be
because
part of it.
you have to, the character is the hardest thing to evaluate because you don't really get to see. It's a little bit like, you don't really see the true character of somebody until it's a stressful situation. Who has self-reliance? Who's able to be, Brad Stevens, the head coach of the general manager of the Boston Celtics, said they won the Super Bowl, they won the NBA title because they had a lot of self-aware players, right?
Right.
So you need people that are self-aware because what you want to be able to do is coach them. You don't
Right.
want to, not them taking your coaching as criticism. That's
Sure.
key. And
Yeah.
so a lot of it is how were they raised? What was their family environment like?
Right.
And one parent family, two parent, maybe they have no parent at all. So you're constantly trying to find out about, and you want to put them in situations where you say, okay, if this happened, what would you do? And you can't judge them because here I am. I'm some white guy who grew up in a middle class neighborhood in New Jersey trying to evaluate some kid, an African American kid from the inner city. We're
Right.
two
Right.
worlds apart. So you've got to really understand the environment that they're in before you can judge them.
Do you get pushback or do you try to stay away? I mean, I guess that's not stay away from kids with behavioral problems, but like, do you ever see someone with so much talent, but they haven't had the structure around them? And so you feel like you want to get in there almost as a mentor and be like, listen, let me show you how good you are. And if you can just focus, you'd be great. And something that comes to mind, and he wasn't a bad kid necessarily, but I had Ricky Williams on the show and he kept talking about how people believed in how good he was. And he's like, I just didn't want to play. And everyone thought I was a drug dealer or whatever. And I just realized that I really prefer to be on a different level than what they perceived I should be doing and what happiness was. And I found that kind of profound.
Yeah, I think you can find that out. The Navy spends almost $500 million to determine who can qualify for BUDS training. Okay. And typically one BUD class has about 175 cadets, let's call them, that are in that class.
Mhm.
And when that class is over, there's probably 25 to 30 that make it. Now they spend $500 million trying to figure out what's going on. But what they can't figure out, Rachel, is they can't figure out who can handle volume. They
Right.
can't figure out who can do it every single day. And so for someone like Ricky, he may love the moment, he may love the celebration in the end zone, but what you have to find are the people that love the process, that are
Right.
willing to do it day after day after day after day and do it the same way every single time.
Mm.
So that's part of scouting. And so really you take a portrait of the player's background. Has he done it? It's rare to find someone who's I mean, there's a lot of kids that have great grades and are great football players. And there's some kids that have bad grades, but great football players. But
Right.
is the reason they have bad grades because they don't work at it, they don't try, or they have a learning disability, or they have no home structure? Like you just can't assume A plus B equals C. You've got
Sure.
to really dig deeper into it before you clear it up.
Okay. Can you explain the money side of things now? Name, image, and likeness, NIL. Explain what that is and also what NIL Collective is.
Well, what
For
NIL is simply this, that the schools are making a ton of money based on the players on the field, and they were not getting anything other than a scholarship.
right.
So for the schools to use the player's name, image, and likeness, they should be rewarded. Now, some schools can not do that. They just won't be competitive. And so what they decided was that most of the schools had to raise funds from the outside, which is the collective,
Mhm.
so that they could get money to pay for this players that they have on their roster. We all know Ohio State paid upwards of $20 million for their team, which it allows them to win a national championship.
That's
So
what I was gonna ask.
what
Yeah.
it simply is the players deserve some form of revenue from these television rights, no different than the NFL players deserve it.
Mm.
Look, NFL salaries, when I started in the National Football League, I think the whole budget for our 49er team in 1984 was $16 million. I mean, there's players, wide receivers make 16 million a year now. So,
Mm.
and why is that? Not because the owners are just trying to be more generous. No, because everybody's making way more money. And so this is why college is a professional sport.
Right.
And so they've kind of collectively bargained an agreement to where everybody's going to get $15 million of revenue from the TV deals for each university in the group 4 area. So it kind of levels the playing field a little bit.